and above the essential equipment needed to get started, if you know, what's more important than the nice to have pieces of equipment is good quality test kits to test your water. Now, what we got to remember here is these corals that are growing in our aquarium, they're not plants, they're animals. And they need calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity to grow. And they need nitrates and phosphates, right? And these need to be at certain levels. Too much nitrates and phosphates is not a good thing. No nitrates and phosphates is not a good thing. So we need traceable amounts of them. And we need to keep them within that sort of range to provide a happy environment for our corals. Now, I get a lot of people that go, oh, I don't need to test, my corals tell me when there's an issue. This is a little bit of a Russian roulette or gambling with a living organism. It's not gambling just with your money that you spent on that living creature. It's its life that you're holding in the whim of it telling you when it needs a certain element is down, and then I will test and then I will add. That is sort of the wrong attitude to have in this hobby. So what you want to do is test your water. Once a week is perfectly fine. Alkalinity you could do twice a week depending on your tank's consumption rate, but once a week is fine. It'll give you a good idea on what your tank's consumption is. Because remember, when we work out our consumption, now what you can do to work out your consumption is test your water, see where you're at, make the adjustments to where you want to be, test again, make sure you're there, and then don't dose any additives to the aquarium. Depending on your coral load, if you've got a very high coral load, test the next day and you should be able to see something. If you've got a small coral load, like you've just started up and you want to see what's happening, then don't do any additives for about 5 days. Test your water, see what the difference is between your first test and your second test, and that you can work out what your consumption is over the course of that week or the 5 days. So you can divide that by 5 and it'll give you a daily consumption. Once you work out your daily consumption, you can work out what you need to dose per day to keep your tank at that mark you want to be. Okay, so now we're going to go into this now. We don't want to chase a number. Chasing numbers creates baldness and gray hair. Trust me, I'm a living candidate. So what you want to do here is chase a range, okay? Well, not chase a range, but make sure that you are staying within a range. So for me, for example, my KH, I like to keep between 8 and 8.4. That is a comfortable range for me, and I only really do anything if I find that I'm going over or under that range. Okay, if I'm staying within that range, I carry on my dosing as usual, and I'll only up my dose or drop my dose if I start swinging either way over or under those 2 marks. Okay, so you're trying to create here stability in your aquarium. The more stability you have with your nutrients, the better growth you're going to get out of your coral. Okay, so what we want to achieve there, I keep mine between 8 and 8.2 for my KH. My calcium I like to keep between 410 and 430. If I'm swinging inside that range over the weeks, I leave it alone. I carry on dosing as usual. So with my calcium, I'll stay within that range. Okay, and then with magnesium, it's the same thing. I keep my mag between 1,300 and 1,330. I'm happy with that, you know, and I don't fiddle with my dosing unless I find that, you know, I'm going out of range on either side, and then I'll adjust accordingly. Okay, so if I find that I feel I'm not dosing enough and my levels are dropping on those 3, what I do is I will get my levels back up to within my range, and then I will test the following day without doing any dosing, and then I'll readjust my calculations. Then I know, okay, because of that going from 25 mils to going to 300 mils, obviously my consumption on that coral has changed dramatically from 2 years ago. So I will adjust my dosing accordingly to my growth and addition of more corals. So if you're dosing daily or weekly and you're testing weekly, and you'll notice a change in the system. Okay. Now these changes are natural. Obviously, the more the coral grows, the more it's going to need to consume. Okay, so we adjust our dosing accordingly. But now, if there's an issue in an aquarium, say for example something dies, now there's a relationship between pH and KH. The relationship is pH in an aquarium has the natural tendency to stay between 8 and 8.4. Okay, if your aquarium is within that range, that's all great. You don't need to really worry too much about pushing for higher pH than that. Most corals are happy. This tank at the moment, when I first started it off, for the first, I think 3 years to 4 years of this aquarium, I was at the 8 to 8.1 mark. Now I didn't do anything to my pH to get it to 8.3 or 8.4, because I felt that the tank is within that range of 8 to 8.4, and I was happy with that. Now with maturity in the system, I'm hitting 8.3 continuously without adding any pH buffers. Okay, but I do control my KH. Now the relationship between pH and KH is, if, for example, something big dies in your aquarium and you don't see it and you can't find it, stuck between a rock somewhere and you just cannot find it, and your only option is to rip the tank apart, and you don't have time and you don't do it, what happens is, as that corpse starts decomposing, your CO2 levels start to rise because of the decomposing carcass in the aquarium, and that will start dropping your pH. Now, when your pH starts to drop, its relationship with the KH, it'll ask the KH for some of its reserve. Now your KH will continue to feed your pH until it hits its limit, which is, I think it's around 3.6 DKH. Now, a 3.6 DKH in an aquarium with acros, you're asking for disaster. Okay, so just bear in mind that other drops can happen that aren't related to the growth of your corals. So if a drop like that has to happen and you aren't aware of it, if you don't test on a regular basis, you're not going to know. And something like that can cause havoc in your aquarium. Now, to give you an idea, okay, I know I'm rambling on here a bit, but to give you an idea, experiences I've had, okay, I test weekly. There was a stage where things were busy and I neglected to test my tank. It was for a space of 3 weeks. When I tested it before the 3-week break of testing, my DKH was at 8 or 8.1, 8, call it 8. Now, something happened in the aquarium that I wasn't aware of. Being so busy, not paying attention, what I did notice afterwards, I was missing one of my fish. But I didn't notice it at the time. Life had taken over and I was just, like I said, busy. Then 3 weeks later, when I came to test my aquarium water, my DKH was sitting at 5.1. Now, in that space of time, it happens slowly, obviously, over the 3-week period. The corals did adapt to that change, and I saw no stress. At that point, I've only got the 3 acros here at the moment. At that point, I had 6 acros, and none of them showed any stress. Of all corals to show the stress first with a DKH drop like that would have been them. So this is just coming back to the point of, my corals will tell me when there's something wrong. Now, 3 weeks ago could have been when the issue started. Just thinking of that slow change gave the corals time to acclimate to that change. Now, if I had tested on week 1, where the first week of missing, I could have picked that up, that I've got a DKH drop, and adjusted. Now, just to show that 3 weeks later, my DKH was at 5.3 and none of my corals were asking for help. It's just a great indicator that when your corals are telling you that they need help, you could have helped them weeks ago, or you could have not disturbed the stability of the aquarium. And with stability comes great growth. The more stable your aquarium is, the more your corals just bloom, especially your SPS. I mean, like this little guy over here, to give you an idea, yes, he's a fast-growing coral. It's a Hollywood Stunner chalice. But this little guy here grew from once again, I think it was around about a 25 millimeter disc to that. And I think I fragged them 6 times, taking about a 2.5 centimeter, 25 millimeter piece around the edge off of him, and he just keeps growing like a machine. And stability is key. I mean, like for example, this little green Stylopora here that's growing here. It's a thick branch one. It's not the same as the Milka Stylo. This guy here, when I first put him in the aquarium, was about the same time as I put him in. He battled a bit in the beginning, and he went from a little fingerling that was in a shape like that, but I'd say half the thickness, to that in the last year with stability, you know. And this is what we're trying to achieve. The more stable you can produce an aquarium, the better off your coral are going to be and the faster they're going to grow. Obviously, slower growing corals are still going to grow slowly, but they're going to grow at their recommended pace rather than being hindered by nutrients being out of whack or out of control. Okay, so that's your calcium, magnesium, and alkalinity. Now when you're talking about nitrates and phosphates, now we try to export them and keep them in a safe level. So now with my nitrates, the range I like to keep my nitrates is below 10 and above 1, or 1 or above. Okay, that's where I like to keep them. I'm happy with them inside that range. I don't have nuisance algae growing inside that range, and I've just noticed corals seem to like it. Obviously, your zoas in that tend to prefer it a bit more on the 5 to 7 mark. But like I said, at the moment, this tank is bouncing between 1 and 2, and my zoa growth is great. So they seem to be happy. With my phosphates, I like to keep them between 0.1 and 0.01. Anything inside there, I'm happy with, and I don't adjust. The only time I'll throw phosphate minus in here is if my nitrates start going over the 0.1 mark. Then I'll adjust with some phosphate minus, and at that level, to bring it down that little bit, you're using such a small amount of the product. I think the recommended dosage on that product for full dose is 100 mils to 100 liters. Quarter dose is 25 mils to 100 liters. And I think when I'm dealing with that sort of level, I'm going with a quarter dose, and it seems to bring it down slow enough and to the sort of mark that I want to stop it at. Like for example, if I use the phosphate minus, I would remove it at 0.05. Nitrophos minus I do use on a daily basis here, and that does help a lot with keeping those two nutrients at controllable levels. I think their minimum dosage is 1 mil per 100 liters, which I'm on at the moment, as my nitrates, like I said, are low and my phosphates are low, and I'm happy with them where they are. I do find if I stop using it, I do find them starting to creep up again. And also another product I do use here, but I don't use it on a daily basis anymore, is ProBioS and NP Pro. Apparently you don't need to use the NP Pro if you're using the phosphate minus, but I still do. But like I said, I don't use it on a daily basis. I'm more on a weekly basis on that. And the BioS, which is your nitrifying bacteria, I do once a month in here as well. As I'm not doing water changes, you're meant to do it with every water change, but I just add 1 drop per 100 liters once a month with that. And it seems to be working its magic. So, to give you an idea, rather spend that money on nice to have equipment, on decent test kits, and when you're ready to start dosing, decent products to dose your aquarium. Remember, when you first start off and you're starting off your aquarium and you're doing water changes, you don't need to look at dosing right away. Test kits and monitor your consumption as you're going, as your corals are growing, and then once you see that your water change is not doing anything and not helping anymore, then you need to start looking at dosing. I see a lot of guys giving bad advice as, oh, you're setting up an aquarium, oh, you need this calcium. Okay, so how do you dose the calcium? Oh no, you just put so many teaspoons to so many hundred liters of water every day, and that should be good. Should be good? How's that good? What is your consumption? How much do you need to replace? You know, too much calcium is a bad thing. Too much magnesium is a terrible thing. Too much DKH is also a terrible thing. So it's too much KH in your aquarium. You know, you got to understand the relationships that all these chemicals have together, and realize that you need to do it correctly. A test kit is a must. I'm sorry, in this hobby, I've done it where I never tested my water, and my tank never always looked great. I mean, guys who have had success with it, I do consider them lucky. You know, those guys should go to the casino and maybe win some money. But like I said, it's a living animal, it's alive, and it needs the best environment you can give it. Remember, you are responsible for your aquarium. So the best you can give your corals, the best they're going to grow for you. You know, and you can make your aquarium work for yourself when you have big colonies that you need to trim down to make space for them to carry on growing, and you can sell those frags to replenish your supplements to keep feeding your aquarium. You know, so like I say, give them the best you can, and they'll give you the best they can. So guys, I hope I didn't ramble on too much there. This is a passion of mine. I've been in this hobby for 37 years now, going on 38, and I think in my 38 years of reefing, I've been without an aquarium for 3 years. I wasn't out of the actual chats and all that. I just did not have my own aquarium in those 3 years. And I can tell you one thing, it's like an addiction. Those 3 years it wasn't 3 consecutive years. It was 2 times, I think, without an aquarium, and it was 1.5 years each time, if I'm not mistaken. I might be a little bit out there, but it's an addiction, and I did have withdrawals. I felt something was missing. You know, and then when I set up that tank, it was like, relaxed and happy. So, like I said, this is our little piece of the reef. We need to do everything we can to produce a happy reef for our livestock. Yes, things do go bad in this hobby. We do lose animals. Unfortunately, it is part of the game. It's not always our fault. Our times we could have done something better, but we do learn from these mistakes, and we progress, and we help other people to not make those mistakes, or try their best not to make those mistakes. So going forward, guys, I just wish you all the success in your reef aquarium, and I hope that I can help in some way along the way. Happy reefing until next time.